Hi guys. Yeah, I wanted to make a quick video. When I started fishing, I saw all kinds of bobbers when I was picking through them, and everybody loves to fish with bobbers. And most of the bobbers that I found looked a lot like this one. It's got a little spring on it, and it sets, and I can fish it. And when I put the spring on, it sets at a certain depth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 feet of water or whatever. But the deeper I set this spring, the harder it is to cast. And sometimes if I want to get like 4, 5, 6 feet deep, this bobber's got a long flopping line behind it, and it makes it kind of complicated. And it took me years and years of not listening to people to understand there's a whole nother kind of bobber out there that's made just for this. It's called a slip bobber, and here's the big difference. This bobber, I clip the line right at that wire, and it stays fixed to the line wherever I clip it. So I can set my line 2 feet deep, 3 feet deep, and it's going to stay there. This bobber has a hole that runs all the way through it. So this bobber slides up and down your line. This is the top. There's the bottom, and that line fits right through there all the way, and it slides up and down. So you can actually adjust the depth of this bobber. So these slip bobbers actually turn out being a pretty cool tool. So I want to show you a little bit of how to set those up and what I do with those. So I find myself fishing in situations like this. So I'm in my boat. This is my boat. And I've got these fish I want to reach that aren't under my boat. They're maybe out by a piece of cover, or maybe they're scattered all around and I want to cover all around me. And I need to get like 8 to 12 feet deep away from my boat. So typically, if we want to fish that deep, I would fish a line straight down, and I'm not getting them. Or I'd fish a regular bobber that goes down 2 to 3 feet deep, and it's not deep enough. I need to get down deeper. So we use a slip bobber, and here's how it works. Okay? Here are the pieces of a slip bobber setup that you're going to need to use to make those. Okay, it starts over here. The first thing that you put on your line is a knot, or a bobber stop, they call it. There are a couple different ways they do this, but this is probably the most common and inexpensive. It's a little tube. You slide your line through. Okay, so I'm going to draw my line, slide it through. Okay, and then I slip this bobber off the tube onto my line, and I pull the 2 strings, and it makes a little knot on my string. That's it. And it slides, but it's pretty tight. The next thing I do is I slide a bead. Okay. Then I go over to my bobber, which is rolling away from me. There we go. I put my bobber and I put it through the top, which has always got a smaller hole in it. Okay. It's going to come out the bottom, and I can have, I don't know, little ways down, and it's going to go to my sinker. Okay. And maybe 6 or 8 inches, and it's going to go to my hook. That's our rig right there, guys. Okay, knot, bead, bobber, split shot sinker, and hook. Now, a couple things about this setup. The knot, there's a couple different ways you can do knots and beads. They actually make a product that kind of does both. It looks like this. You just slide this on, and it's almost like a rubber bead that's tight to the line. The only thing I find about these is if I set my line really, really deep, that knot's going to go up into my reel, and these are pretty bulky to be in my reel. It messes up my casting. Just a thought. But if I'm setting like 7, 8 feet deep, these work. If I want to set deeper, I need to use a knot. Okay, the sinker. The sinker needs to be heavy enough that when your bobber comes to rest and that sinker goes, it stands it up. Okay, you want it standing but not sinking. Standing is important because sometimes a fish will come up underneath and lift the bait as he eats it. And with that sinker, the bobber will lay on its side, and you're going, what the heck's going on with my bobber? That's a fish eating it. It's not going under. He picked up on it. So you're still going to want to set the hook down. Okay, so you want this sitting in the water like that. Okay, too heavy and it sinks, too light and it's not really standing up. You want it to stand up. So you'll have to experiment with the size bobber and the size sinker you use. I think I've got about the right match here. Okay, so that's the basic rig. Now here's a little bit more on this. Okay, I kind of drew this out again. Here's my knot, my bead, bobber, sinker, hook. Okay, I'm going to focus on these 2. So here's what's great about these. The knot is what controls the depth. See, as I cast this out, the bobber and sinker and hook are all going to be bunched together. It's only about 6 inches hanging down from the end of my rod. The bead is going to be on top of that, and they're all waiting for that knot to set it up. So wherever I slide this knot is how deep it's going to go. So if I want to fish 7 feet deep, I got to make sure from the hook all the way up to the knot is 7 feet. For me, usually that's at the end of my pole or maybe partway down the guides of my pole. Okay, so I'm going to set this knot. And when I cast it out, all this stuff hits the water. I'm going to zoom out. And the sinker starts pulling it down. Okay, so it's pulling it down, pulling it down, pulling it down. And when that bead, when the knot hits the bead, it's going to come to the end of the bobber and it's all going to stand up. It's going to go all sliding, sliding, sliding. And by the way, you have to leave your bail open and slack to let line go do this. And it's going to slide, 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 and then your line's going to go and stand up. Then you close your bail and you're fishing. It's pretty much that easy. So let's see a little bit of what that looks like. So here's me fishing again. There's my happy fish. And I'm fishing like 8 to 12 feet deep or so. Now here's the thing. When I cast, bobber hits the spot. The beads, the knot is up here and it's sliding down as the sinker pulls it down. Okay. The bead is sliding. I'm sorry. The knot's going to slide, hit the bead. It's going to go knot to bead, and that hits the end of the bobber and stops it. Okay. That's what's going to make the bobber stand up. And now I'm fishing 12 feet deep. Okay. It's a pretty slick setup. It's a great way to present baits a little deeper. I think this kind of bobber works a little easier if you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of water, but more than 5 or 6 feet down, a slip bobber tends to work better. I use this for, I use it for crappies. I'll use it for fishing like perch and stuff just above weeds. I use it for walleye fishing. We use it a lot for gar fishing. Sometimes they're hanging down 12 feet in 25 feet of water, and that's a weird spot to get a line to sit. I can fish straight down under my boat, but I also want to reach out into some places where I see them. So we cast these slip bobber rigs, and it does exactly that. It goes out and then sets up at 8 to 12 feet. So I'm going to go through this again just real quick so you can see the parts to this. Often, these two things, you buy a pack and they come together. Slip bobbers are slip bobbers, sinker and hooks. Okay, just a last thought on hooks. Match the hook to the size fish you're doing. Okay, if I'm fishing for bluegills or crappies, I usually use like this is how they write hook sizes, a number 6 or a number 8 hook. For bigger fish, I'll use something larger like a number 2 or a 1. Okay, and bigger fish, you can go bigger from that. But mostly for my spring fishing, I'm fishing crappies, and that's what I'm using. So I hope this is helpful. It took me a little while to figure them out, but once I'm using it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so great. So I hope maybe you get that little feeling as you give it a try this spring. Good luck.